Hi, my name's Matthew Ames. Have you ever tried to make smoke in After Effects without third-party plugins? If you have, you've probably come up with something like this. It's probably made out of CC particle world, just blurred out. It's got the advantages of a particle system, you can move it around and stuff. But it lacks detail. Detail that, say, fractal noise has. But if you've tried to use fractal noise, you've probably been frustrated because, well, you have to mask it, and then it looks masked, and that looks terrible. Maybe even worse than a particle system. So, but I figured out a way that I can combine the two to get kind of the best of both worlds without masking. So, follow me and I'll show you how to do that. Hi there. I've got After Effects open here, so let's jump right in and create our smoke. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is create a new composition. We're going to call this Smoke FX. Okay, the way this works is we've got a smoke texture and smoke particles, and the smoke particles are what we control, and they will reveal the smoke texture. That's what the smoke texture is, what gives it its detail. So first, let's create our smoke texture. So we're going to create a new solid layer, new solid. Okay, and we'll call this fractal. Okay. Oops. And anyway, I'd like it to be black. Well, actually, it doesn't matter. Okay. And let's look up fractal and effects and presets here. I'll drag and drop fractal noise onto our effect. And see, it didn't matter that it was green. It just covers it up. And I've got this nice big square composition. See if we look at our composition settings again. It's nice and big. It means that we got options. I like textures like this, I like them to be square and pretty large. But it's up to you. Okay. So next here we need to change some settings. I'm going to take the contrast, turn it down just a little bit. See, since this is the texture for our particles, what we want it to do is to animate like smoke and look kind of like smoke. So first we're going to turn on, or see this evolution stopwatch here, we're going to alt click that. And then we're going to add an expression here, and it's going to be time times a star. Star represents times. So time times, I think 200. Let's see if I'm right. And I'm just going to turn this down to third resolution. That's pretty good. Okay, and we're going to want it to animate upwards. So we're going to go to our transform settings over here, and we're going to alt-click offset turbulence right here. Alt-click that, and we're going to enter. See, this is a little bit different. I recently found out how to do this. See, for something to add an expression, at least in this case, see, it's a position x and y. We have to address the x and y coordinates independently, and to do this, we're going to have an open bracket, open square bracket, and we're going to just enter a 0 because we don't want x to change at all. And then for on the y-axis here, we want it to rise, and we're going to go time times, and rising up is a negative number, so it'll be negative, and I think about 300 I think is pretty good. We want it to move rather fast. So yeah, something like that. We can always change it later. One thing to note is we're going to want the smoke to rise at the same rate as our particles rise. So when we create our particles, we'll sync that up. Okay, and I think for the moment that's it for our smoke text. Oh, I like to change it to dynamic progressive. Gives it a little more smoke-like detail. Okay, and next we're going to pre-compose this. Right-click, pre-compose, and we're going to call this. We're going to move all attributes into the new composition. We'll just call this texture. Okay, and see, we got all this black in here. This smoke only works, as far as I can tell, for a kind of thin smoke, and it's not going to have. We don't want it to have black shadowy areas. We want to be able to see through those areas. So if we turn on transparency, we can't see through these areas. So if you have some plugins will let you do this. I know that Unmolt from Red Giant will let you do that, but assuming you don't have anything like that, this is a good way to do it. So I'm going to duplicate our layer, and I'm going to turn the bottom one, the track matte, to Luma matte, and see we can see through all these areas. When we put it into context in our video, it'll look better. So anyway, just trust me. Okay, and so we're going to pre-compose this once more. Pre-compose, and we're going to call this smoke texture. Yep. Okay, and for the moment we'll turn that off so we can't see it. And we're going to create a new solid. This one we'll call particles. And oops. Oh, here we go. So this composition, we need to change our comp size. So I'm going to change the. I like to go with 1920 by 1080. So 1920 by 1080. Okay, and now we also need to change our composition size. So I pressed Control K to bring up our composition settings, and I'll make this 1920 by 1080. Okay, there we go. Once again, it's got this dark green color just because the last thing I created was dark green. It doesn't really matter for this because when we apply our effect, the color of the layer is just going to disappear altogether. So let's look up effects and presets. We're going to look up particle, and here's we're going to select particle world, drag this on top, and here we go. And so we're going to need to change a lot of settings here. Let's change, first of all, change our producer. I want this smoke to emit from a point, so I'm going to change the radius of each one of these to 0. 0. There we go. It emits from a nice point. We're going to change our physics. We're going to change our gravity down to 0. And our velocity, let's see. Well, we're going to change our animation type to fractal uni, so it goes up. And we're going to change our velocity to 0.5, I think. And our resistance, we're going to change that to 0.5 as well. And so there we go. Oh, and we need to change our particle settings here. We're going to change it from line to darkened and shaded sphere. There we go. And I'm going to just change this white so it looks better for the moment. There we go. And that's basically our smoke. Now, next, I want it to fade out more like smoke. So, oops, don't need to. I can open this opacity map right here, and see this is the y-axis here represents its opacity, and the x-axis represents time. So this is a graph of its opacity over time. So I'm going to just draw down this nice curve here. So it's very opaque to start with, and fades out very quickly. Fades down. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to just move our point down a little bit so we can see it better. Right there. Okay, so that's most of the settings for particle world. And here, so next we want to make this. See, this is it's alpha. The alpha channel is going to anywhere these particles appear is where we'll be seeing our smoke texture, and that's this. We get the detail from our texture, but we don't want it to be just little dots because smoke doesn't look like that. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to look up get vector blur. So here's vector blur. I'm going to drag this on top of our particles, and going to change the type to direction fading, and decrease that a little bit because we kind of want it to smear up just a little bit, not too far. And that's good for that. Let's see. I also want to go with glass. Here's CC glass here. I'm going to drag that on top, and we're going to change our bump map. We're going to change that to smoke texture, which we've got down there. And we're going to change or just height just a little bit. Maybe our displacement a little bit. I don't know. Depends on what you like the look of. Okay. So we're trying to spread it out a little bit so that there's more space for our texture to show up. So I think that's good for the moment. Let's apply our texture. So we're gonna hide our particles, and we're gonna reveal our smoke texture. And then see under track matte here, we're gonna change the smoke textures track matte to alpha matte. So now, see, it appears where our smoke texture, or our smoke particles are. So let's see how that looks. So look at all this detail we've got now. It doesn't look, it's not perfect yet, but it's got a lot more detail than it did to start with. Because if you compare that to this, it looks more smoke-like. So anyway, and so see here we can see. I think we need to speed up. See, we're trying to get the smoke texture to rise at the same rate as our smoke particles are. So let's open up our smoke texture here, open all the way to texture. And let's see. Let's increase the rate it's motion upward a bit, and open transform, and double click on offset turbulence. I'm going to open our expression here. Let's try 350. See if that looks any better. I think it's moving too fast now. Let's turn back to 300. Okay, I just tweaked a couple things here. Mostly just, I changed the velocity down to 0.4. I think that's a little bit better. Velocity of the particles. See if we can make this better as time goes on here. It's really just have to play with it. For instance, we might want to change our longevity. We might try changing that to 0.5. See what that looks like. It depends on what you're doing with it. If we're going to want to change our birth rate, if we want it to move around a lot so that it stays thick enough. That's looking pretty good. That actually looks pretty good. Okay, so we could leave it at that if we wanted, but I think I'm going to take it just a little bit farther. And for instance, I think it's a little bit thin down here near the base, and there's some things we could do to fix that. But before any of this, there's something I like to share with you that's very useful if you like to work with particle world. This has been my biggest gripe about particle world, and I finally looked online and I found a solution to this. See, what I haven't liked about particle world is that, oh yeah, actually, if you haven't saved your project, you should save it. Don't forget that; that's important. Okay, see, with particle world, I've oftentimes with effects like these, say I wanted a flare to follow around the base, and maybe I wanted the base or this to emit from, say, my hand moving around. I'd probably use a null object or something, track my hand with that, and then I'd want to parent the position of my the emitter right here to whatever I'm moving around. That can be very useful, but it seems like with particle world, I've read that for its position, and instead of using just pixels in measurement, it does, I don't understand exactly, but it uses something like the ratio of the width or height of the comp to the position you enter in, or something like that. But anyway, the point is, if you try to just, say we create a null object, I'll show you what happens. So I'm going to go Layer, New, Null Object. And say I wanted to take the position of our smoke here. So press P on our null to get its position, and we're going to change it to 3D. Then here, let me double click on this to open it down below. Say I wanted to parent the position X to position X of the null. I'll alt click it and I'll drag. I'm going to whip it up to the null. And look at that, it just disappears altogether, and it's never to be seen again. But I found a way to fix this, and I'll be showing you how to do that. So delete that expression. I got this online. These are some expressions for each one of the coordinates, and it's set up for null 1. Let's rename this null 1. If you wanted to parent it to something other than null 1, you can see right here it's referencing null 1. You'd want to change that name to whatever you wanted. So anyway, I'll copy, and in the particles here, its position, I'll click at stopwatch. We're going to paste that here, so Control V, paste that, and we're going to alt click on the Y stopwatch and come over here, copy the Y expression, copy, and we're going to paste that, Control V, and copy this, Control C for Z, and alt click the Z stopwatch, and Control V and paste that. Okay, so now we got all 3 of those. Now, see, it's moved up to our null. So now it's parented to our null, and this is great. Anytime I use a particle system and want to move more than one thing along with it, I'm definitely going to use this. So see, it follows our null around now. Oops. So now that we can do that, let's just animate this a little bit, so we can see any problems it has when we start moving it around. So animate this, and oops. Start over on this side. Start right there, and we'll come over here. There we go. That's not bad. Okay, now we can do that. Now that we've done that, I think see, one thing I like to do is it's a little thin. The smoke is a little thin where it's first emitted. See, that the way I can fix that is if select these 2 and duplicate them, and in the particle settings here, I'm going to here, let's just solo this one, so that's all we see. And I'm going to change a few things. I'm going to change the longevity down to maybe 0.5 just to get some variation going here. What I'll do is I'll just take the texture and move it over a bit. See, it's so much larger than our comp, we can do that. And that way the textures don't line up exactly on both of them. So now if we unsolo that, just trying to get a little thicker near the base there. And I think this is staying thick too long, so for the original particles, I'm going to change the longevity to say 0.2, or I mean 1.2, and solo that, and maybe just make it 1 second. There we go. It's just a matter of playing with it until you like it. Depends on how long you want your smoke to last and how thick you want it. And that's actually not bad. If you wanted your smoke even thicker there, one thing you can do is just duplicate this last one, or this last particles here. Turn it on so we can see it. Here, I'm going to solo it, and I'm going to turn down the vector blur a little bit. Well, that's another thing I did. I ended up turning off the CC glass on the others. It wasn't looking that good. Just so you know, sometimes that can look good depending on how you do it. I think I'll turn off the CC glass, and I'll turn down the longevity to say 0.2. There we go. We're just wanting to make the end of it a little bit clearer. Okay, that's actually not bad. So I hope you found this useful. You could stop here if you want. Personally, for the fun of it, I like to add a little, say maybe a little fire that's emitting the smoke. I'll show you how to do that if you want. It's not real detailed fire. This is better for an effect off in the distance a little bit. So what I can do is just duplicate our particles one more time. I'm going to solo it, so that's all we see. Open up our custom color map here, and change from, instead of birth to death, we're going to change that to custom. And then we can just have a little more control over the colors over life. And I'm going to change this to a lighter yellow. And the orange is okay. And You can see that. I'm going to go up here to grid and guide. I'm just going to turn all this stuff off here so we see things better. Let's turn off our grid and turn off all that stuff so we can see our work better. Here, I'm going to call this fire. Change it orange. Okay, and turn that up. So let's change this to natural. Just gonna make it a little bit fiery. Let's change up. I want to close that. Let's let it last a little longer here. So I'm going to change it to say 0.3. Okay. And I'm going to duplicate this once more. Now this is something you might want to do with your other smoke particles. Change up the size variation just so that it's got more variation. That's something I've done. If you want, you can do that. Okay, so actually I'm not liking the size variation turned up on this. Get 50%. Get some randomness. Okay, and really, the way to really sell this is the glow. So let's add some glow to it. We're going to go over and search glow and go under stylize glow. Apply that to our fire. By default, it's set to the original colors. It just takes those and adds glow to them using the original colors. I don't usually like that. I'm going to change it to A and B colors. That way we can set our own. I'm going to change the A color to kind of an orange. I'm going to set the B color to kind of an orangey red. And then I'm going to turn down the glow threshold. And then I'm going to turn up the radius, up the intensity. Kind of like that. I like to use several glow. This one will be our glow that's a little tighter. Actually, I think the birth rate ought to be turned up a little bit. Let's turn that up to 3. That's better. Get a little thicker. So this is our first glow. And I'm going to duplicate our glow. Let's see, let's turn the radius up a bit. There we go. So we got some nice tight glow around it and then some lighter glow around the whole thing. And see, I'm going to want to add some flicker, and I'd like to control it with only one control. So what I'm going to do is Alt-click on the glow intensity here of the glow 2. See, on glow 1 here, I'm going to double-click on its glow intensity so that we can see it down here. So it's open right there. And let's grab the pick whip, drag it up to glow intensity right there. So now when I change glow 1, it changes both of them. That's just really handy. Next, let's add one more glow. I did this first so that when I duplicate this, it has that same expression on it. So now we've got glow 3. And what I like to do with this is I can produce kind of a quick little flare, make it look like a flare. I change the glow dimensions, see right here, to horizontal. And then I'm going to turn up the glow threshold so it emits just from the hot spots. I'm going to change its transfer mode to add. There we go. Make it more fiery. Here, I want these to die out a little faster, so I'm going to pull that down. I want most of our glow to appear right around the very hot center of whatever that is, a fireball. Something like that. That way our flare appears there mostly too. That's pretty good. You can play with that on your own. This isn't fantastic fire. This isn't really a fire tutorial, but this is just, I thought I'd add this on for the fun of it. It's not satisfying to me just to smoke. I like some fire. Okay, and let's see. I'm going to, finally for this, I'm going to add a wiggle expression to our, put up the first glow. I'm going to add a, see, I want it to flicker a bit, so I'm going to alt-click the very first glow stopwatch because that's what the other expressions are referencing. So if I make this, if I change this, they all change. And I'll alt-click that. We're going to add an expression called wiggle, and it takes two arguments, 2 values. And the first value is the frequency that this changes at, and I think I'm going to change it to make that 3. comma, and then the second value it takes is the amplitude, and let's try 7. Close parentheses. There we go. And that's a little bit bright. And I'm going to change 7 and make that say 3. That's not too bad. I'm going to change that down to 2. That's pretty good. I think this outer glow is a little on the bright side, so I'm going to, it was the second glow, was the outer glow. I'll turn up the glow threshold a little bit. There we go. That's better. Okay. And now let's just unsolo these, and there we go. Got a nice, this could be easily a meteor or a fireball being thrown, like you saw in the intro. And so that's it. Oh wait, one more thing. Just for fun, let's, here I'm going to unseparate those dimensions, and we'll just add a little expression here, just to make it more fun. There we go. There we go. Crazy meteor, or an evil pixie. Okay. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, consider leaving a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more tutorials like it, subscribe and click the bell icon to enable notifications, so that way you won't miss my next one. So once again, my name's Matthew Ames, and I hope to see you in my next tutorial.